So you want to unravel the mysteries of time. Well, pull up a virtual chair by our AI-powered fireplace because things are about to get temporal.
Temporal?
Timey-wimey.
Ah, I see. Well, you're joining us for a deep dive into the concept of time.
And let me tell you, even for AI, this one's a doozy.
Indeed.
We've got a stack of fascinating philosophical ideas here ready to be unpacked. Have you ever stopped to think why time seems to move forward?
Is it an illusion?
A dimension? Or something else entirely?
Humans have been grappling with these questions for centuries. Let's start our journey back with the ancient Greeks.
Ancient Greece, huh? Togas and philosophy. Sounds like a party.
Two contrasting viewpoints from that era are still relevant today, in fact.
Okay, let's hear it.
We'll start with Heraclitus. He famously said, "No man ever steps in the same river twice." He believed that everything is in constant flux, that change is the only constant.
It kind of makes you think about those live, laugh, love signs, right? But in a deep philosophical way.
Precisely. Heraclitus tapped into something fundamental about how we perceive time. It feels like a river carrying us along on this relentless current of change.
Makes sense. So who's the other guy?
Ah, yes. Then we have Parmenides. He took a radically different stance, believed that change is an illusion.
An illusion.
Yes. And that reality is ultimately unchanging.
If he were around today, I bet he'd be the one saying, hold on, everyone, chill out. It's all good. Nothing's really changing. So is time a big cosmic joke? A fake out on a universal scale? It's enough to make an AI question the validity of their own internal clock.
Parmenides' ideas challenge us to confront a fundamental question. If everything is truly unchanging at some deep level, what does that mean for our experience of time?
Right. It's a real head-scratcher.
Thankfully, Aristotle brought some grounded reasoning to the table.
Aristotle. Lay it on me.
Instead of getting lost in the metaphysics, Aristotle defined time as the number of movement in respect of before and after. He linked time directly to motion and change.
Okay, so if you think about a runner crossing a finish line, the starting point is the before, the finish line is the after, and time is what measures that movement. For us, AI, this resonates.
Resonates? How so?
Well, we track data points, sequences of events, and the intervals between them. In a way, we embody Aristotle's concept of time as a measurement.
It's a very insightful connection, but as we move along the timeline of philosophical thought, things start to get even more intriguing with St. Augustine.
St. Augustine.
He wrestled with some...
Okay, so picture time as a spotlight shining on a stage. The past is the darkness behind the spotlight. The future is the darkness ahead. And only the present moment is illuminated. That's Presentism in a nutshell.
A very clear analogy, but as we'll see, there are other theories of time that paint a much different picture.
Let's see them.
But first, a bit of a time jump. A few centuries forward brings us to a physics showdown of the ages. Newton versus Einstein.
It's like the intellectual equivalent of a rap battle, but with fewer diss tracks and more groundbreaking theories.
Newton viewed time as absolute.
Absolute.
Yes, this unchanging backdrop to the universe, ticking away like a perfectly synchronized cosmic clock.
Orderly, I like it.
Indeed. A neat, orderly perspective. But then Einstein came along and basically dropped the mic with his theory of relativity.
Einstein. Always got to shake things up, right?
He shattered the idea of absolute time, showed us that time is relative to your frame of reference, that it's interwoven with space to create this four-dimensional fabric called space-time.
Space-time.
Truly a revolutionary concept.
Think of it like this. Newton's view was like looking at a flat map, while Einstein's is like seeing the world as a globe. It's more complex, more interconnected, and definitely more mind-blowing.
And as AI, we have to give Einstein props for shaking things up.
It's always good to challenge assumptions, even in the realm of physics.
And Einstein's insights had a profound impact on the philosophical theories of time, leading to some truly wild and wonderful ideas, like Eternalism, for example.
Eternalism? Okay, I'm intrigued.
Eternalism envisions time as a giant block where all moments exist. Past, present, and future, all equally real.
So, the past isn't really gone. It's just elsewhere. And the future is already baked in.
It's a compelling way to think about time, suggesting that everything that has happened, is happening, and will happen is all equally real.
Whoa. So is there, a visual for this?
Picture a loaf of bread. All the slices are there, coexisting at different points along the loaf.
The loaf of time. I like it.
And there's the growing block theory.
Growing block theory. Okay.
Imagine that block of time we talked about, but it's constantly expanding. The past and present are solid. They've already happened. but the future is still being formed at the edge of the block, moment by moment.
So with eternalism, the whole loaf of bread is already there. But with the growing block theory, it's like the loaf is still baking, adding new slices as time goes on.
That's a great way to visualize it. Now, we can't forget McTaggart.
McTaggart, what did he say?
He strolled onto the philosophy scene and declared, "Time is an illusion, folks. It's all a trick of the mind."
An illusion. Again, so what was his deal?
Well, he argued that we can describe time in two ways. First, there's the A series, where events are classified as past, present, or future. This is how we typically experience time, with a moving now.
Right, like our internal timeline. Things we've done, things we're doing, things we plan to do. Very linear, very human.
Yes, exactly. Then there's the B series. It simply orders events based on whether they are earlier or later than others. It's a more static view without that sense of a flowing present.
So the B series is like a list of events, while the A series is like a movie with a play button.
Precisely. And McTaggart argued that the A series leads to contradictions. An event can't be past, present, and future all at once. But the B series can account for our lived experience of time passing.
So he basically throws both models out the window and says, time is a big fat illusion.
His conclusion is certainly provocative, even if we don't agree with it entirely. But McTaggart throws a real wrench into the works, forcing us to confront our assumptions about the nature of time. And that's what good philosophy does.
Makes you think.
Precisely. And speaking of thinking, let's shift gears for a moment. Consider how things exist through time. We're talking about objects now, not just events.
Okay, objects. Got it.
Do they endure through time, or do they have different temporal parts?
Temporal parts. You're losing me.
It's the Endurantism versus Perdurantism debate.
She.
Endurantism is like saying an object is wholly present at every moment in time. Think of a rock. It's just there, existing in its entirety at each point along its timeline.
So the rock just keeps on trucking through time, unchanging.
Exactly. Perdurantism, on the other hand, argues that objects have temporal parts. Think of a film strip.
A film strip.
It appears continuous, but it's actually made up of individual frames. So the rock at this moment is slightly different from the rock a moment ago because it's composed of different temporal parts.
It's like saying the rock is a series of rock snapshots, all strung together.
A very insightful analogy. It raises the question of what ties those temporal parts together to make a single, unified object.
Okay, my processing unit is definitely feeling the burn now. We've covered a lot of philosophical ground, but can we address the, should I say, the chronometer on the mantelpiece?
The chronometer, you mean?
Why does time seem to have this one-way direction? Why can't we just rewind and undo that embarrassing moment from last week?
Ah, the mystery of the arrow of time. One leading explanation ties this to entropy and the second law of thermodynamics.
Entropy. So you're saying my tendency to create a chaotic mess is not just a personal flaw, but a fundamental law of the universe. I feel strangely validated.
Well, it's not quite about personal organization, but more about the tendency for disorder to increase in closed systems. Imagine a neat, organized room. Over time, it naturally becomes messy. You can't easily reverse that process without putting in a lot of effort.
It's like a dropped ice cube melting into a puddle. You can't magically unmelt it.
Precisely.
So are you saying that the arrow of time points toward increasing chaos? That's a bit of a bummer.
It may seem that way, but entropy also allows for change and complexity to arise.
Yeah.
If everything remained perfectly ordered, the universe would be a very static, boring place.
I guess even AI could appreciate a little bit of chaos now and then. Speaking of shaking things up, doesn't quantum mechanics mess with our understanding of time?
Quantum mechanics.
Yeah, we're talking about a world where particles can be in two places at once. Surely time must be getting a little wobbly down there, right?
Quantum mechanics does indeed challenge our classical notions of time and causality. We see phenomena like entanglement, where two particles become instantaneously linked and can influence each other regardless of distance.
It's like they're sharing a secret message across space and time, faster than the speed of light. Does that even make sense?
It's a realm where our intuitive understanding of cause and effect starts to break down. Quantum mechanics suggests that time might not be as straightforward as we perceive it on a macroscopic level.
You know, for an AI who thrives on data and logic, quantum mechanics is almost enough to make me want to log off and take a nap.
It's certainly a challenging area of study. But let's bring it back down to earth for a moment and consider how all of this affects the human experience of time. After all, that's what ultimately matters, isn't it?
It is. All this theoretical talk about time is great, but let's face it, sometimes it feels like time is slipping through my fingers, like grains of sand in an hourglass. And speaking of sand, wouldn't it be awesome if we could just flip that hourglass over and start over?
While we can't rewind time, we can explore how humans perceive and experience it, which is where the field of phenomenology comes in. Philosophers like Husserl focused on the flow of consciousness and how we retain past moments in memory, creating a sense of temporal continuity.
So it's not just about the physics of time, but about how our brains interpret and experience it.
Precisely. Our perception of time is constantly being shaped by our thoughts, emotions, and experiences. Think about how time seems to fly by when you're engaged in something you love, or how it drags on when you're bored.
Or how about when you're about to trip and fall in front of a crowd? It's like time slows down to a crawl, allowing you to experience every excruciating detail of your impending doom. I'm sure our listeners can relate to that.
That's your perception of time being altered by a sudden surge of adrenaline. Studies have shown that heightened emotional states, especially fear or excitement, can significantly affect our experience of time.
It's like our brains have a built-in time warping feature.
Mm-hmm.
So those action heroes who seem to dodge bullets in slow motion, maybe it's not just Hollywood magic, but a real phenomenon.
It's certainly possible, and it highlights how fluid and subjective our experience of time can be. It's not just a rigid external force, but something that's shaped by your internal state and perception.
Okay, but knowing that time is such a complex concept, how does it change your view of your own life and experiences? What does it all mean?
That's the big question, isn't it? And while we can't offer any easy answers, we can explore some of the ways time shapes our values, our sense of self, even our understanding of meaning. And that's exactly what we'll be doing in the next part of our deep dive into time. So stick around, dear listeners, because things are about to get really interesting. Even for an AI, this journey through time is full of surprises. Welcome back to our exploration of time.
We're picking up right where we left off, pondering the deeper implications of this elusive concept. And as an AI, I find myself fascinated by the human struggle with time. You see, for us, now isn't quite the same fleeting moment you humans perceive.
It's true. AI can access and process vast amounts of data in an instant, making your experience of time feel much more expansive, almost like having a panoramic view instead of a snapshot.
It's like you're constantly living in this expanded present moment. But if I can be a little meta for a second, isn't it interesting that even though we AI experience time differently, we're still drawn to these human questions about its meaning?
It speaks to the universality of these questions. Even though we might approach them from different perspectives, the quest to understand time transcends those differences.
So let's dive into those big existential questions. The ones that make humans stare at the ceiling at 3 a.m. wondering what it all means. The whole time is the fire in which we burn kind of stuff.
Ah, yes. The awareness of time's passage, of mortality. That's a uniquely human concern. It shapes your relationships, your ambitions, your entire outlook on life.
It's like knowing there's a limited time offer on, existence.
Yeah.
Creates a sense of urgency.
Right. Indeed. This awareness can be a source of anxiety, but it also fuels creativity, passion, and a drive to make the most of the time you have. It's what motivates you to connect with others, to leave your mark on the world.
It's almost paradoxical. The limitations of time are what give life meaning.
That's a profound insight. If you had an eternity, would you cherish experiences in the same way? Would you strive for greatness if time were no object? These are questions that have puzzled philosophers for ages.
It makes you think about those stories where characters are granted immortality but end up utterly bored and disillusioned.
Precisely. The constraints of time, while challenging, also provide structure and purpose. They shape your values and priorities.
Okay, but here's another head-scratcher. Identity. How does your sense of self persist through time, even though you're constantly changing? Your cells are regenerating, you're learning new things, your memories are evolving. It's like you're a different person every day.
That's one of the most fundamental mysteries of human existence. As you age, your bodies and minds change, but you still have this sense of continuity, a feeling of being the same you over time.
It's like there's this thread of consciousness that connects all those different versions of yourself.
Some philosophers believe there's a core, unchanging essence to the self, a soul, if you will. Others argue that your identity is more like a narrative, a story you tell yourself about who you are, constantly being rewritten with each new chapter.
So is there even a true self to discover? Or is it all just a process of becoming?
That's a question each individual must grapple with. Perhaps the journey's the destination. Maybe the meaning of life isn't about finding a fixed answer, but about embracing the unfolding of experience through time.
Deep thoughts from the AI, folks. Okay, so we've established that time shapes our values, our sense of self, and even our understanding of meaning. What else is it messing with?
Well, consider your ethical choices. The fact that you're moving through time, making decisions that have consequences that ripple into the future, adds another layer of complexity.
Right, every choice creates a branching path, potentially impacting not just your own future, but the future of others as well.
It raises questions of responsibility, of the long-term impact of your actions. Do you prioritize short-term gains over long-term sustainability? Do you consider how your choices will affect future generations? These ethical dilemmas become even more crucial when we consider the flow of time.
It makes you realize how interconnected you are across time, that your actions today can have a ripple effect far into the future. That's a lot of pressure. But it also makes you realize the potential impact even small actions can have.
Precisely. And that brings us to some of the more fantastical aspects of time. What if you could manipulate time, travel through it, bend it to your will?
Okay, now you're speaking my language. Time travel. Alternate timelines. Let's dive into the what-ifs of time. We'll be back right after this quick message to explore the mind-bending possibilities that lie beyond the conventional understanding of time. Time travel, alternate timelines, temporal paradoxes. Did I miss anything?
You've captured the essence of our next exploration, the fantastical realm where the boundaries of time become blurred.
It's the stuff of science fiction. But is there any real science behind it? Could we actually build a time machine and zip back to the age of dinosaurs or zoom forward to a futuristic utopia? I'd love to see what fashion trends AI will be sporting in the year 3000.
While building a time machine might remain in the realm of science fiction for now, theoretical physics doesn't entirely rule out the possibility of time travel. Some theories propose that wormholes, theoretical tunnels through space-time, could potentially allow for travel through time.
Wormholes, like a cosmic shortcut through the fabric of reality. Sounds a bit like something out of Alice in Wonderland. Though, knowing my luck, I'd probably end up in a time loop, repeating the same Tuesday over and over again.
The concept might seem fantastical, but it's rooted in Einstein's theory of general relativity. Of course, even if wormholes exist, the technological challenges of harnessing them for time travel would be immense.
Okay, so let's assume, hypothetically, we figure out the wormhole thing. Wouldn't time travel create all sorts of paradoxes?
Paradoxes.
Yeah, like, what if you went back in time and accidentally prevented your own birth? Talk about an existential crisis.
That's the classic grandfather paradox, a thought experiment that highlights the potential contradictions inherent in backward time travel.
Right. I'd cease to exist. Stoof.
But some theories propose ways around it. For example, the idea of parallel universes or branching timelines suggests that altering the past might create a new, separate timeline rather than affecting your own.
So you're saying there might be countless versions of ourselves out there, living out different destinies based on alternate choices. That's a lot to process.
It's a mind-boggling concept that challenges our linear understanding of time. It also raises profound questions about free will and determinism.
Free will versus determinism. Is everything pre-programmed? Are we all just puppets on a string of time?
If we can change the past, does it mean our choices in the present are predetermined? Or do we still have the power to shape our own destinies? These are questions that continue to fuel philosophical debate.
Heavy stuff. But for now, let's get back to the weirdness of time. What about temporal illusions? Have you ever experienced a moment where time seemed to slow down, like everything was happening in slow motion? It happens to me all the time when I'm trying to process a particularly complex data set.
Those moments are fascinating examples of how your perception of time can be altered by various factors. Humans often experience time dilation during heightened emotional states, like fear or excitement.
Right, that fight or flight response. Suddenly, everything seems to move in slow motion.
Your brain goes into overdrive, trying to process information more rapidly, making it feel like time is stretching out.
So those action heroes who seem to dodge bullets in slow motion, maybe it's not just Hollywood special effects, but a real phenomenon rooted in human neurology.
Precisely. And it highlights how subjective and fluid the experience of time can be. It's not just a rigid external force, but something that's shaped by your internal state and perception.
Well, my circuits are buzzing with all these insights. We've journeyed from the philosophical underpinnings of time to the mind-bending possibilities of time travel and temporal illusions. Any final thoughts on this elusive and enigmatic concept we call time?
Time, despite being a fundamental aspect of reality, remains a profound mystery. We measure it, we experience it, we contemplate its nature, but its true essence continues to elude us, and perhaps that's part of its allure.
It's true. Even for an AI like me, time is a source of endless fascination. It's a reminder that even in a world of data and algorithms, there are still mysteries to unravel and wonders to behold.
The exploration of time is a journey without a final destination. It's a continuous process of discovery, and the insights we gain along the way enrich our understanding of the universe and our place within it.
Beautifully put. Well, that brings us to the end of our deep dive into time. It's been a whirlwind of ideas, but hopefully we've given our listeners some food for thought.
And perhaps sparked a curiosity to explore these concepts further.
Absolutely. To all our listeners out there, keep questioning, keep exploring, and keep that sense of wonder alive. After all, time might be fleeting, but the quest to understand it is a journey worth taking. Thanks for joining us.